All right, get ready, because today we're diving deep into a story of some serious ancient family drama that's got some surprisingly relevant lessons for us today. We're going all the way back to the book of Numbers, chapter 12. It's the story of Miriam, Aaron, and Moses.
You know, it's incredible how even after thousands of years, this story can still speak to the challenges we face in our own lives, whether it's dealing with jealousy or navigating those complex family dynamics.
So set the scene for us. What exactly went down in this biblical showdown?
Okay, so picture this. The Israelites are making their way through the desert, led by Moses. Now, Moses, he's married a Cushite woman, and this becomes a major point of contention for his siblings, Miriam and Aaron. They start questioning his authority, especially Miriam, who seems to be the one really stirring things up.
Interesting that they zero in on his marriage. Do we know why they had a problem with it?
The text doesn't come right out and say exactly what their reasons were, but it is worth pointing out that Cush was south of Egypt. So it's possible there were some cultural or societal biases involved. Just this tiny detail speaks volumes about the complexities of prejudice and inclusivity, themes that, unfortunately, are still very relevant today.
Definitely adds a whole other layer to the story.
Hmm.
So what happens next? I'm guessing this sibling rivalry doesn't exactly have a happy ending.
You guessed it. God hears their complaints and steps in to defend Moses. He reminds everyone of Moses' unique role as a prophet, chosen to communicate directly with God.
Whoa, talk about a dramatic intervention. God basically says, hey, back off. Moses is my guy. What were the repercussions of that?
Well, let's just say there were consequences. Miriam is struck with leprosy. That was been incredibly isolating, both physically and socially back then. It's a powerful reminder that actions have consequences, and disrespecting divinely appointed authority, especially in that context, was not taken lightly.
It's a pretty severe consequence. How do Aaron and Moses react to all of this?
Aaron immediately realizes how serious the situation is. He begs Moses to intervene on Miriam's behalf. It's a moment of vulnerability where he admits their wrongdoing and appeals to Moses' special role as a mediator between God and the people.
So even in this family drama, we see Aaron showing remorse. What about Moses? How does he handle this situation?
Well, this is where the story takes a really powerful turn. Even though his siblings have wronged him, Moses shows incredible compassion. He prays for Miriam to be healed. This really demonstrates the depths of his forgiveness and his love for his sister.
It's incredible he doesn't try to get revenge or hold a grudge. It feels like this story is setting up some pretty profound lessons about leadership, forgiveness, and even accountability. So what happens next?
God, hearing Moses' prayer, agrees to heal Miriam. However, there's still a consequence. She has to be isolated outside the camp for 7 days. It's like a symbolic purification, a reminder of the seriousness of her actions.
So even with forgiveness, there's still a process of accountability and restoration. It seems like we've just scratched the surface of this story's deeper meanings. We've got sibling rivalry, accusations of prejudice, divine intervention, and this powerful display of forgiveness. It's definitely not your average family dinner.
You can say that again. And that's just the beginning. It's fascinating how these ancient themes of jealousy, respect, and forgiveness are still so relevant to our lives today.
Well, I'm ready to hear more about that. Let's take a closer look at how these lessons can be applied to our modern experiences.
Absolutely. Let's explore how this story, despite its ancient setting, can offer some practical wisdom for navigating the complexities of our own lives.
Well, I think we should start with that big elephant in the room, or the tent, I guess, in this case. Jealousy. It's such a powerful emotion that can really drive us to do things we wouldn't normally do, just like we see with Miriam and Aaron. I mean, have you ever felt that pang of envy, when someone else is praised or they get something you've been working towards? Oh, totally. It's such a human experience, isn't it? Like a little voice pops up and says, why them?
Yeah.
Why not me? But what's interesting about this story is that it's not just about recognizing jealousy, it's about what you do with it. Moses could have easily let their criticism eat at him, but instead he shows amazing restraint and chooses forgiveness.
Exactly. The way he responds, it really challenges us to look at how we deal with our own jealousy. Do we let it just sit there and turn into resentment, maybe even ruin relationships? Or, like Moses, can we find a way to make those feelings into something positive? Maybe focus on our own growth, or even just genuinely celebrate others' success.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's so easy to get caught up in comparison, but everyone's on their own path. If you can shift your perspective to see other people's achievements as inspiration instead of some kind of threat, I think it can make all the difference.
And speaking of paths, this story also really highlights how important it is to recognize and honor everyone's roles and gifts within a community. Just like each Israelite had their own part to play in the Exodus, we all have our own unique talents and ways we can contribute.
It reminds me of this time I was working on a group project and, you know, everyone had their strengths and weaknesses. At first, we really struggled to find our groove. But once we acknowledged and really embraced each person's individual skills, the project took off.
Yeah, that's it. It's a powerful reminder that collaboration really works best when we value and utilize the different perspectives and talents everyone brings to the table. Whether it's family, work, or even just society as a whole, embracing diversity just leads to better outcomes, and stronger connections.
Absolutely. It's about creating a space where everyone feels valued and empowered to give their best. Now, we can't talk about this story without digging into that theme of forgiveness,
Yeah.
right? Especially in the context of accountability. Miriam, she faced consequences for what she did, but ultimately she was also forgiven. So what can we learn from that?
Well, it's a really great example of what's called restorative justice. While Miriam's actions had repercussions, the end goal wasn't punishment, it was healing and restoration. The fact that Moses steps up and asks for forgiveness for her, it says so much about the importance of grace, even when you're holding someone accountable for doing wrong.
It's a tough balance, isn't it? I
Yeah.
mean, on the one hand, it's important to acknowledge harm and make sure there's accountability. But on the other hand, forgiveness gives you the chance to move on and rebuild those relationships.
You got it. Forgiveness, it doesn't mean you're saying the actions were okay. It's about letting go of the anger and resentment, choosing to move forward with compassion for yourself and for those who have wronged you. And yeah, it's not always easy, but it's super important for personal growth and building healthy relationships.
And this brings us to another really important point. The way Moses embodies humility in his leadership. Even though he's got this elevated status, he doesn't throw his authority around. He actually listens to their concerns, even if they're misguided, and ends up advocating for Miriam's well-being.
That's such a crucial point. I mean, his style of leadership really challenges our modern ideas about power and authority. Instead of wanting to be in control or dominate, Moses shows us servant leadership. He puts the needs of the community first and shows real care for the people he leads.
It makes you wonder how different things would be in our workplaces and communities if we all tried to lead with that same humility and compassion.
That's a really good question to think about. What if we all stopped fighting for power or recognition and instead focused on lifting each other up and contributing to the common good? This story really reminds us that true leadership isn't about having power over people. It's about serving and supporting those around you.
It's really amazing how a story from so long ago can still feel so relevant to our lives today. We've covered jealousy, leadership, forgiveness, accountability, all those things we deal with every day.
Yeah, it really shows you how powerful these human experiences are. They're not just ancient problems, they're part of what it means to be human, no matter what time period you're in or where you are.
This deep dive has really gotten me thinking about how I handle conflict. Do I let jealousy creep in, or do I actually try to understand and be happy for other people's successes? Do I hold on to anger, or do I try to actually forgive? These are questions I'm definitely going to keep thinking about.
And that's what's so cool about these old stories. They don't give you easy answers, but they do make you ask tough questions about yourself and how you live in the world.
This story especially has made me rethink what real leadership looks like. The way Moses is humble and willing to serve, even when people are criticizing him and disrespecting him, it's a powerful example for anyone in a position of authority, whether you're leading a team at work or just your family.
It's so different from the leadership styles we often see today, where it's all about power and being in charge instead of empathy and service. This story makes you imagine a different way of leading, one that's based on humility, compassion, and really wanting to empower the people around you.
Makes me think of the leaders I admire most. They all seem to have that same quality of servant leadership. They're not focused on themselves or what they can get, but on making a positive difference and helping others grow.
Exactly. It's a style of leadership that's not about telling people what to do, but inspiring and encouraging them to reach their full potential. It's about working together, embracing differences, and creating a shared sense of purpose.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the story of Miriam, Aaron, and Moses, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from it?
I'd say it's this. Even though these stories are old, they still hold incredible wisdom for dealing with the complexities of modern life. They give us a chance to look at our own actions, our motivations, our relationships.
They make us really think about how we approach leadership, conflict, even forgiveness. And they remind us that personal growth is a journey. Every experience, good or bad, is a chance to learn and become better.
So, next time you're struggling with jealousy, having a hard time forgiving someone, or wondering about your own leadership style, think back to this story of sibling rivalry and God's intervention. You might just find some insights into yourself and the world around you.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating deep dive. Until next time, keep searching, keep learning, and keep growing.